Hey there, Hunters. Kai's Wifang, Pack Leader of Scourge Alliance, and today I'm on the PTS, the final PTS, and I wanted to share my thoughts and some of the changes here with Werewolf and Werewolf in PvE. Firstly, you're going to notice here on your weapon damage that you're going to get a boost to your innate weapon damage. You're going to see some of your stats come through straight on to your bar here, so this is going to affect you in no CP areas, but as far as looking at PvE, there's just a slight change in those values. The biggest one you're going to notice is you actually have a pretty significant increase to your health. This is going to allow you to run, usually I would recommend this Braised Rabbit, that would now see you got 24k health in PvE area. So you really don't need that much health, so you can actually come down and you can get the Lava Foot soup, and that's going to add the stamina and add the stamina recovery. And you'll see that brings our health to around 18k. That has some CP passives plugged into that, and I'll show you that in just a minute. The other thing you want to notice is crit values have changed quite a bit here. So what I'm using now is a precise two-handed weapon. Can be any two-handed weapon. None of the passives are carrying over as far as weapon bonuses. So whatever you have, it will be good because it doesn't carry over to werewolf form. I have Reliquins, Bloodthirsty on the jewels. I've got Thovskins for the other 5-piece, and I'm just using Selines here. One of the things you'll notice is when you do a light attack, you're going to get some extra penetration due to the fact that your bleed can proc that extra penetration on the target. So you really don't need as much penetration anymore because it's basically giving you that extra penetration. So currently I'm just using a precise weapon that's going to help me get some of that crit back. For my Mundus, I'm using the Shadow here, and then basically on the gear, just running all Divines to increase that Shadow percentage. Since we are building up that extra crit with the Thovkins, and we are getting the Minor Force on top of that, and there's only a couple ways that a Werewolf can get Minor Force, and it's a lot of damage. This is what's going to work out best. Played around with Blood Moon a little bit, and really, it doesn't do enough for you anymore. They have nerfed the light attack speed pretty heavily over the last few patches on Werewolf as part of their balancing, quote-unquote. So what you're going to see is you're really not getting that much out of the Blood Moon procs anymore, and that is mainly due to the fact that they have removed the light attack CP. So there used to be a CP that granted increase to the amount of damage that your light attacks do. There isn't that anymore for the blue tree at all. So Blood Moons is really going to net you down at least 5k to 7k DPS on a trial dummy. So as far as the champion points go, I'll just kind of run through some of these real fast, give you an idea. Green Tree, as far as actual passives that you're going to want to pick up, they don't really have a lot of items that involved your damage or anything like that. So as far as your slottable passives, I have that Steed's Blessing that's just going to help you move a little bit faster when you're out of combat. War Mount, Professional Upkeep, reducing cost of repairs. And I even got a sneak decrease on there. There's plenty of things you can choose and move around in here. None of it really is going to help you increase the damage that you're doing in werewolf form. So that's why I don't want to focus too much on this stuff. So we'll just move over to what matters. You can see that I've only spent some of them. Here on PTS, it was a full 3,200 point template. I'm using a fraction of the CP that is available to me just because I wanted to see at what level werewolf damage kind of peaks out. When you start leveling up more, you're going to be able to increase some healing, or you're going to be able to help reduce damage more in some of the resisting parts of the tree here, because we are in a warfare tree now. That's what the blue tree is considered. So this is the main bulk of what your combat damage and resistance is going to be coming from. So as far as the CP that I'm using, I'll cover the slotted ones that I'll recommend first. Fighting Finesse, that's just going to give you an extra 10% critical. It's found right there. Backstabber, that is going to increase the critical damage done by 3% per stage against the enemies that you are flanking. That's 15% bonus. That's huge. It's kind of cool that you're starting to see more encouragement to be flanking the enemy. A lot of mechanics in the game have that incentive to get behind the boss while the tank is holding it. This will allow you to do some more damage when you're behind, so it kind of rewards you for playing smart and staying out of stupid. That's good. When you're doing trials, especially ones where you're like fighting dragons, where all the damage is straight up front, you're going to want to swap this bad boy out with something else. There's Biting Aurora here, and that one just increases your area of effect damage by 2% for each stage here. So that's the one that you want to unlock instead. That'll give you a 10% increase damage done to your AoE effects. So your Brutal Pounce, Claws of Life, your heavy attacks, your Werewolf, Berserker heavy attacks, it will all increase that damage. So especially maybe like when you're clearing trash too, you can swap over to this one instead of your Backstabber. Deadly Aim, that's just your single target, so your light attacks, your bleed, your straight up howls of agony, or whatever howl you're using at the time. It's going to increase that heavy attack. Main damage, it's going to help that out too. And then Thermitage, which is just going to be helping out your dots, all the dots that you have going on. And those are the four that I'd recommend, especially when you're just fighting bosses. Like I said before, you can swap out Backstabber for the AoE one when you're doing trash. The other CP that is important here, you have the Precision, that's going to increase your critical chance. You have your Max Stamina, this is just a straight up passive, so you don't need to slot this one at all, so it's just giving you an extra 1,000 stamina. There is the Magicka one here that you can put points into after you've unlocked some of your other ones. When you're starting to creep on maxing out your character, that extra Magicka will help you with your healing and the amount or how often you can heal. Over here you have some more slottable ones. I really don't recommend these. Using the percentage-based ones are even better. Which is kind of sad when you think about, Werewolf and the additional perks it has to its max weapon damage and its max stamina, that even these perks aren't worth using over the percentage ones. So really it's not worth anyone using them if, Werewolf that has the highest percent increase to those stats doesn't have any draw, so it'd be nice to see them increase these values a bit to encourage, some variety in people's builds. But that's just my opinion on that. As far as roll dodged out of there accidentally, you're going to notice this guy over here. This is Extended Might. This is what you'll want to invest your points in my opinion. Get your piercing done in there, but your other two here really aren't that big of a deal as far as adding DPS, so get these last if you're lower CP. This blue allocation that I have here is just shy of 1200 CP, like a 1200 CP character. So battle mastery and might here, you can end up maxing those out last and you'll be fine. Okay, so that's kind of your blue tree there, as far as most people getting started in Werewolf DPS. Like I mentioned before, when you start getting a little bit more into it and get more CP, that's when you're going to start filling up some of this other stuff that reduces your AoE, or the damage taken by AoE, reduces the single target damage to yourself, damage over time. There's some more slottable abilities down here, but really you're just going to want to use those if you're a tank. In the red tree here, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of slottable abilities. This is called Fitness Tree. So you're going to see, as far as the passives that I'm slotting in PvE, I've got the Boundless Vitality, that's just increasing the health pool. Some Bloody Renewal, which when I kill enemies, I get more stamina back, so that's 1500 stamina when I kill targets. So that's really good when you're clearing up your AoE trash, because some of your AoE abilities are a little bit more expensive, so getting that extra stamina is just going to help you with some of your sustain there. Ironclad, just cranking up a little bit more of that armor. We lost some armor as werewolves go, because we used to have just that 10,000 resistance added on. Now it is major resolve, so that's just giving a little bit less. This kind of will make that back up, and you're going to be sitting around the same amount of resistance you were before you got nerfed, unless your group was running that major resolve before for your DPS. And you got rejuvenation, which is just giving you a little bit of recovery across the board. Some of your passive ones that I have here was Defiance, just breaking free, costs less. Tumbling reduces the cost there. Reducing the cost of sprint. You can put some more into your this guy right here, which will give you more resources as you come back to life. That's looking a little bit like it'd be good, especially if you're completing new content. Hasty right here, this is nice because it just increases your movement speed, period. Just increases it by 8%. And then you've got some other ones here where you're looking at reducing the cost of block, reducing the cost of bash, increasing your bash damage, and increasing your movement speed while you're basically blocking. And then increasing the amount that you can block. So there's a lot going on here. I spent all the points in here, but I just wanted to show you, as far as your slottable ones, you should really be focusing on these ones right here. And then your other passive abilities, I would really focus on that speed. Some of the roll dodge is nice, and the break free is okay. And then also maybe upgrading that tempered soul to 125, and then you can worry about all these extra block mitigation ones later on. And so as far as your rotation and your damage that you're doing, this is a single target parse that I will put up here, and you can just kind of look at my rotation. PTS is a little laggy, so it's not letting you weave his abilities as good as it probably will on live. Cross your fingers. But as far as morphs and everything, I'm just using the the Werewolf Berserker, giving you that bleed damage. Your Brutal Pounce, that's going to ramp up your weapon damage when you start stacking it. So I like to lead with the Brutal Pounce, especially if you're jumping into a group of adds or more targets, and applying that Brutal Carnage on your enemies to get that 600 weapon damage. And that's really going to help increase the amount of damage that you're doing. Hircine's Rage. So they've nerfed this pretty heavily. You know, Major Berserk used to do a lot more damage. Back when it did more damage, I was a little bit hasty to even put this in rotations. If you're having issues sustaining yourself, you can use Hircine's Rage to give you that extra damage. It will help you increase the damage of your proc sets. It's also going to help you increase the damage of if you have like Reliquins, it's going to increase that damage. So I kind of use it in my rotation here against the dummy, and you'll see how I'm doing it. When you're in a fight where there's a lot of constant damage, it's not really reliable. So when you know that you're in a fight where you're taking damage and you don't know if your heal is actually going to proc your major berserk, because you do have to heal yourself when you're at full health. So if there's a fight where there's dots or random shock AoE, anything like that, I'd recommend staying away from using Hircine's Rage. But if you're in a fight where you can control the amount of damage that you have come in, or if you're part of a burn phase and you know that you're going to be topped off with health, or someone put a barrier up so you know you're going to be full, that's when you can add that Hircine's Rage into your rotation. Ferocious Roar, you can use that to increase the speed of your AoE. Really, you just have it on there for the major savagery. Some fights it's okay to have that AoE CC on your bar, that's just going to help. You could also run the penetration morph too, that works well, especially if you're in areas where you're not next to your tank and you want to gain that extra damage for your group, because the other morph does also decrease the amount of spell resistance the target has now too, so it's a double boon for yourself and your Magicka allies. I'm currently using Howl of Agony, but you could use Howl of Despair. As you can see, Werewolf does have a perk while it's fighting an enemy that's facing you, so you're not going to get that extra damage from this ability while you're behind flanking your enemy. But on targets like dragons, when everyone else doesn't have that additional bonus to flanking, you at least have that additional damage to your Howls of Agony, which could be good. And Claws of Life, as you continue to do more damage and increase the amount of damage that your Claws of Life is doing, you're going to start seeing some really nice heals out of this. And as part of your DPS rotation, just having it up on your target at all times, your healers are going to thank you, because when you have 7-8 targets that you're hitting with this, it's going to be very, very hard for the enemies to kill you. So it's just another way that you can help stay alive during some of these fights, just keeping those Claws of Life on your targets. And then you just want to make sure you're all maxed out on your passives. Your weapon passes, like I mentioned before, they don't matter, at least as far as your damage passives here, so don't worry about that. Class, I did my DPS here with the Sorcerer. I'll probably end up doing some more tests here with the other classes just to see where they're at. But they still have too many of their passives that are locked behind their class abilities and having class skills slotted. So that's the big thing that Sorcerer has over all the other ones, is they just get stuff, amplitude increases your damage against enemies by 1% for every 10% current health, so they just have that on at all times. When they're in werewolf form, doesn't matter. Energize, and just increasing the physical damage. The majority of damage the werewolf is doing is physical damage, so there's another bonus to your damage. Capacitor, just increasing your magic recovery. They just give you passives for this, you know. Power Storm, just to decrease your ultimate ability. You know, every other class in the game is so stipulated in having to have X. So, like, when you are using X ability or when you are using X tree ability, you gain X, you know? And Sorcerer has just got some just flat passives that they just hand you. So I'd really wish that they would not necessarily lock Sorcerer stuff behind things, but unlock some of the other classes' passives that they just have that extra flavor at all time. They don't have to use a Daedric summoning ability, you know, that's Sorcerer, or an Daedric on Templar, or Necromancer's abilities. There's a lot of cool passives, but so many of them are tied to the actual class abilities, and using the class abilities, it's kind of sucks for werewolves. But, going on, medium armor, you just want to make sure you got all those passives unlocked. And then, of course, your class is going to play a lot in your damage. I actually did my DPS tests here today with the Dark Elf. The Orc did get a little bit of a nerf to its damage, but I went ahead and tried out the Dark Elf just to see, you know, what their damage is looking like these days, and just pulled a little over 88k DPS on single target. I've done over 90k with this setup. And that's when stuff isn't lagging around, so it is possible. Another interesting thing is you could possibly even start using Sloths. It has to be in a place, or Thrush Stranglers, right? That gives you Sloth's Call, because you can pull 100k on a werewolf now. They reduce your health, but you can also swap out some of your, you know, you could use Dubious, which gives you some health, and stamina recovery and stamina. But they should fix Threshin so it just stays on you at all times, and if you die, it stays on you, and only removing the Stranglers going invisible or crouching would remove the stacks from you, would be my suggestion. Because getting up to 50 stacks in a dungeon or a raid is still not a short order, especially that the effects drop off you when you're transporting, so you have to get all those stacks in a dungeon. So would be my suggestion, but I'm still using Celine's on here. I've done some parses with some of the other ones. I tried Molakina still, not worth it. The slowing down of those light attacks really makes proccing Molakina in DPS really clunky. Cross is pretty good. I would say use the Crow or the Celine's, depending on your penetration. Alright, well that's all I have for you. I'll play that DPS rotation for you real fast, so you can see that, and I'll just explain kind of my thought process. Is I'll jump in with a Brutal Pounce, and I'll proc that Brutal Carnage first. All the time, I'm just weaving light attacks between every single ability that I'm doing. So I lead in with the Brutal Pounce, and then I'll go ahead and I'll add the Claws of Life, and then I'll throw on a Hircine's Rage, and then I'll put about 4 to 5 Howls of Agony, depending what my ping's doing. By that time, you should have about 2 seconds left on your Brutal Pounce. You're going to want to reapply that before it hits 0 so you can build up another stack. Because you can get 6 stacks of that. So then once you are down to about 2 seconds, you're going to hit that bad boy again and reapply it. And back to your Claws of Life, Persene's Rage, 4 to 5 Halls of Agony, until you get to about 2 seconds left on the Brutal Pounce, and you just rinse and repeat until the thing's dead. Just try to stay behind it the best you can. If the target goes off balance, go ahead and weave in a heavy attack if you need some stamina instead of a light attack. Just don't let that brutal carnage fade off of the target, because it'll take a little bit of time to get you those stacks back up. Alright, that's all I got for you. Hope it was helpful. Have a good day. I can eat. No. Huh? What? I didn't see it. When did you text me? What was it? Sorry, I didn't see it.